Today we're going to make a mold of a channel ring. It's made of sterling silver, removable sprue former, and you may notice that I've faceted one side of the sprue to show me which side of the sprue the ring is attached to. This side has no facet on the sprue. This side has the facet on the sprue. So I've cut some pieces of rubber here. First I measured the amount of rubber I was going to need by stacking it up next to the mold frame. That lets me know how much I need to fill the mold frame, and I've cut a little extra here in order to overfill the frame a little bit to make sure I create enough pressure inside the mold to get the rubber to flow well. It's one of the things that you want to do is always overpack the mold just a little bit in order to create better flow in the mold. So let's see, I'm going to have my ring right about there in the mold. So one of the things that I'm doing, I'm using Castaldo natural rubber in this mold, and the yellow label is slightly softer and more flexible than the white label. White label is more stiff. The yellow label is 35 durometer, and the white label I believe is 42 or 45 durometer. So it's stiffer. And I cut a strip of the yellow because this is going to go inside the ring as the core of the ring. Like this. I see I can use a little more in there. So what I'll do I have space for that? Yep. I can just take a little bit off the edge here, because you see I'm making this yellow core in the mold just so that the ring is in a little bit softer rubber. And what we use that strategy so that the wax can be removed more easily from the mold, and the hard rubber in the mold won't warp the ring so much. It's interesting because I can feel the softness of this yellow label rubber compared to the white label rubber. You wouldn't think that the difference of 6 or 7 points on the durometer scale would be that much different, but it does. You can really feel the difference. So center the ring in the mold, get my other piece of yellow label here, put it over the ring. Now I've got two what I call stitching tools here, and one of them is just a regular mold knife frame, scalpel knife handle, and the other one is a special handle that I made with a plastic handle and a bit of brass rod that I turned on the lathe. I mainly use this one in silicone mold making because it has a wider tip for pushing down on the softer silicone. Silicone is very putty-like compared to this natural mold rubber. So what I do is I just connect the rubber all the way around the ring, and then peel off one side, position it in the ring mold. There we go. And pull off the plastic. You don't want to leave this plastic in your mold because, boy, it makes a nasty mess. When you're tacking or stitching the rubber down around your model, you want to be careful to not scratch the model with the edge of the scalpel blade. So there we have that. Position this over the center of the mold. I like to tack the ends together like that, and then just squeeze it down all the way around. I'll come back and tack things down a little bit more. Shortly you'll see, well, if you compare this to the videos, the other videos on the website, you'll see how much more labor intensive and how much more time it takes to make these rubber molds than it takes to make the silicone molds. The silicone molds are, silicone is very putty-like, and you shouldn't be afraid of it. It's really a wonderful stuff. And you just take it and press it into the mold, and it flows and forms really delightfully. Okay, so at this part of the mold, I begin stacking my rubber in there. I'd rather not cut it because, of course, every time I pick up the scissors and start to cut on the rubber, then it takes more time. It takes more of my time. So I just fill in the cavities, low spots in the mold, with folded bits of the natural rubber. And so that saves me a little time on this. This is the end with a sprue former in it. I want to be careful not to try and stitch down the sprue former, because that will that could, of course, bend the sprue, and since the whole thing is hooked onto the master, it could end up bending the master. And boy, we just want to protect that master the best we can, so that it doesn't so that the master doesn't get bent or scratched, because we're making lots of molds of this master. This sucker's in high production, and we don't want to have to clean it up each time, or even worse, have to remake the master because we'd damaged it during the mold making process. Okay, there we go. Can't stand stuff sticking up like that. I'll tack it down. Okay, so that's pretty nicely overpacked. This is one of the mold frames that I haven't filled the holes on yet, but I am going to come back and fill these holes with bolts, and then go ahead and cut them off. So now we're ready for putting this into the mold, into the vulcanizer. I need some aluminum plates that I'll put on each side of it. I'll slip it into my vulcanizer and vulcanize it for 15 minutes per 1/4 inch. It's a 3/4 inch thick mold frame, so this mold will vulcanize for 45 minutes.